Welcome to Born or Made, the podcast that dives deep into the heart of success and identity. Are the traits that define us as leaders ingrained from birth, or are they carved out throughout our experiences? Join your host, Anne-Marie LaTulip, as we ask these questions to some of the most insightful and inspiring entrepreneurs of our time. Each episode, we explore their journeys, the decisions that shaped them, and how they've molded their own paths to success. So whether you're an aspiring entrepreneur, a seasoned business owner, or simply curious about the interplay between nature and nurture in professional growth, you're in the right place. Get ready for compelling stories, transformative insights, and a new perspective on what it really takes to make it in the world of entrepreneurship.
Hello, and welcome back to the Born or Made podcast. I'm your host, Anne-Marie LaTulip, and with me today, I have the lovely Greta K. Greta, how are you?
Good. How are you? Glad to be
I'm
here.
so good. Yeah, I'm so happy to have you here. You have such a great story. I would love before we get started, I would love it if you could just take a minute and tell everybody who you are and how you got to be where you are today.
Okay, so I am Greta K. I do help people. I focus on helping with alcohol addiction and actually any other addiction. It works. So I did develop the 5-step program where it helps people to get rid of any addiction. So really, some of them who doesn't have smoking or drinking addictions or drug addictions, they use it for like getting rid of sweets, right? Or stopping something in their life. So they see it all different ways. So I'm a writer. I also coach people, one-on-one. I'm working on a course that's going to be available online for people who are struggling. And I mainly focus on alcohol addiction because that was the hardest one for me to beat. So obviously I have a story behind it, right? It's not from what I heard or saw. I grew up in a family of alcoholics. I struggled my childhood. So I knew I would never become one because of the way I grew up. But then obviously a couple of years after I turned 18, I started enjoying drinking myself to where then I struggled with addiction for 15 years. So it wasn't just having a glass or 2 glasses of wine at night. It was up to being in a hospital for 14 times 1 year.
Really?
So I would drink for 2 weeks straight, not even eating So it was really bad. Obviously I had smoking as well. So it was just destroying to a point where one time I just realized that was the last time I drank when I came back from one of my hospital visits. And then I just started writing, which I didn't know I liked to write, but I never did. So I just was the middle of the night, I couldn't sleep, and I started writing. So I wrote a little article about what I saw, how I felt at that moment. And then now it's been 9 years. I've been sober, and obviously I'm not going back to it.
That's
So
awesome.
I did realize somebody you have signs there and there. And I had a feeling I had to sit down and start writing a book. So I couldn't write in the middle of the day because I was too busy with everybody, So I would get up at 4 or 5 in the morning and write. And I just kept writing and writing and writing, and it all came together. So I wrote a book, and now, I do the coaching, I do any interviews. So just to get the word out there and for people who need help so they can reach out, and that's I'm creating all these different tools so they can do it online in their own privacy, because I know not a lot of people like to admit it, even to themselves and, to everybody else, of course.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I totally agree. I would love to ask you a little bit about your story with alcohol. And you said, well, you did mention that you were in the hospital, and I'm guessing that's from alcohol poisoning or
Yes.
withdrawal. Okay.
Yeah. So once you drink for 2 weeks, you just can't do it by yourself. You have to be
Yeah. So
in
you
a
were
hospital.
drinking day and night?
It's nonstop. So you basically get up, drink, and go back to sleep for like 2 weeks straight. So I was
Dear.
losing jobs. I was obviously, then you can't function because you don't even drink water. So it's, I think they call it like binge drinking. So you just drink and it's a cycle. So I didn't realize, like, I wanted to stop, obviously, right? I tried everything I knew, but I didn't understand how, like, without even knowing, after a certain period of time, like a month, I would just fall into it again. And I'm again at the same point. until that last time I was like, okay, now I understand what's going on. This is a cycle, and I realized how to not get into that cycle. So, and to stay away as far of it, far away
Yeah.
from it as you can. And once you understand, it's just a matter of, do you really want to stop, right? So some people say they want to stop, some people are forced to stop by others. I feel like when it's time, and I'm just giving tools, for you to, whenever you're ready, this is how you
Yeah.
stop and never go back.
So were you able to stop at that after that last time
Yeah.
without any help? How did you do that? And have you been tempted at all to drink since then, or was it a complete mind shift for you?
It was like I just knew I'm not gonna drink, because at that point I feel I tried everything, and at that time was then I had my second child, so I was pregnant. Obviously, I didn't drink for a long time.
Yeah.
So that was the only thing I haven't tried yet, right? So I thought after like a year I was cured. Now I can socially drink again, and smoke,
Yeah.
obviously. And before I knew it, took a month for me to end up in a hospital again. So I said, that's it. There's nothing else for me to try. And I was actually seeing like the visuals on how all the cycle works from the time you take the first drink to where you end up, at your lowest. And it always gets worse every time. So there's a cycle. And the only way not to get into it is not to take that first drink. That's the only way. And then it just gets, of course, in the beginning, I think the hardest part is people not understanding, and obviously you're going through angers and all that stuff, you need a support. And then also people who drink, they don't understand, and them questioning why you don't drink. So I'm like, it's hard enough for me to say no, right? Obviously I've been doing this for years, and now I have to explain myself, and they're like, what do you mean, just have a drink with me? I'm
Yeah.
like, no,
Yeah.
and how do you get out of it? To when you retrain people, then the people change around you. Obviously, people are going to change. They're just going to not be interested talking to you anymore. They're going to be like, I don't want to talk to her. And then you get new people who actually support you.
Wow, that's awesome. How has your life changed um since since you're not drinking? How is your head? Is it way clearer? I hear that a lot about people that stop drinking.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
that's why I write in my book too, that day and night. So the moment when you're drinking, it feels like you're trying to build something and it all falls apart all the time, because I compare it, drinking is evil, and it's just evil's tool to control people and do a lot of harm. That's how I see it.
Okay.
So once you decide, you kind of shift yourself to the side of goodness and God, or whatever you want to call it, whichever you believe in, but the good and bad, obviously there's two of them, right?
Yeah.
So then everything is just starts falling in place. Obviously you're getting healthier, you're getting stronger. And that's why I thought I'm never going to quit smoking, right? Because that was one thing I was like, no, there's no way. But after 4 years, I'm like, okay, I don't need that anymore. I feel so healthy. I feel so happy. I don't want that at all, right? And then all the people, all the things just start happening for you. You start building everything. So I went from, not having money to get food for my kids at some point, right? To now I own the businesses, and I do all these things that I want, and I just enjoy every minute of my life. So then, people say, oh, you're like, do you worry about getting older? I'm like, no, I'm actually living now. I kind of stopped living that I was 25. So now it's my 20s, because I absolutely love it. I feel great. I have everything I want, all the people, all the love and support and everything. So
Uh
I would never, ever go back. It's just not, and I know how not to, right? So
yeah.
it's just not an option for me. So it drastically changed like night and day.
That's amazing. Let me ask you, how much when you were drinking, how much of it was habit and how much of it was actual desire to have a drink?
I think you just always want to drink. I say you as I say in my book, you just live like double life, right? You get up, you go to work, all you can think about is how you're going to go home and have a drink. And then, that drink turns into 5 or 10 until you fall asleep, and you just guess how bad the next morning is going to be. So then you get up and you just want to drink all the time. It's
Yeah.
just so it's addiction, right? So I was gonna
Yeah.
say so addictive because it is an addiction. So it just
Right.
controls your life. It does control your life. You're not you anymore. You can't do certain things because your hands are shaking, right? You're not feeling right. You're just trying to get through the day, drink to feel better, only to, feel worse afterwards.
Right, right, exactly. And that, so tell us a little bit about your book. You said earlier that you just started writing the article and then it graduated into a book. So tell
Mhm.
us about the book and how that experience was writing, because we were talking before the interview and you said that you never knew you were a writer.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear how that kind of came to be.
So then I wrote that article. I kind of put it away. I knew it's there, but I never went back to it. Probably 4 years later, my brother's girlfriend, she's like, you should write a book about, your life. And I'm like, the book would be nice, but yeah, and I forgot about it. And last couple of years, I did a lot of spiritual work, so I had my teacher and she kept telling me you have to write the book. I'm like, what a book are you talking about? I don't know what you're talking about, right? I knew like I kind of like writing, but like I mean writing at school, I don't write, so I don't know what you're talking about. And she's like, there's a need for you to write a book. And she's like, I feel it. So you kind of, and then it started thinking, and I'm like, and every time I saw her, she's like, did you start? And I'm like, no. So one time I'm like, okay, I don't think I can tell her no again next time I see her, right? So she's like, just start working on, the cover or something. And that's how I sat down and started writing the first page. And I'm like, it just all came together, and all these things, so it's basically the book is not long at all. I say I've read it in a couple hours probably. So it's my story, right? Just for people to understand how bad my addiction was. And then it's a 5-step. So again, it's 5-step program. These are the steps you keep up with, you know, how to not never go back, how to, it explains the, I call it vicious cycle, the cycle that you get in and it just kind of, you just spins you around until you end up in your lowest again. And it's just a tool, people who don't drink, they all read it, they say it's about self-love. So everybody understands it differently,
Yeah.
but it's basically the tool, like very simple to the point. And the people who even stopped drinking already, for them to make it easier, right? So I'm like, some people stop drinking and then they feel like they're suffering every day. They're like, oh, I can't drink. Everybody else can, I cannot. And they literally fight themselves all day long. And I say you look at it differently, right? You look at it as you choose not to drink. You choose this life. You choose the way to feel the way you feel right now. So you are a winner. You're not a victim at this point. So stop beating yourself up. You actually
Yeah.
enjoy it. So it's just like tools for people to how to stop and then how to get through, and it's very simple, very easy, and everybody can read it really fast. And I feel the book is something like somebody can grab and read and nobody knows, right? So nobody had to know. So the beginning was hard for me because I was there and I owned my business, everyone, right? And I worked for a big company and nobody knew my past. So I had to put my story in there. And I'm like, what is everybody going to think about me? But then I'm like,
Yeah.
it's not about me, right? I have to put me aside to be able to help other people
Wow,
because
what an
it's most
amazing
important.
realization that must have been, because I was going to ask you that. How did you feel about, kind of coming clean about what you had been struggling with? So you kind of answered it before I had a chance to ask.
I was terrified. I actually cried probably for a week straight. I almost didn't publish the book. I just could not think about all these people who see me so high up and look up to me as a leader now gonna know my past, right? Because it's really obviously my past is only like 5% in here, right? Just the basics. My past is really crazy, and there's a lot of things and a lot of things I had to get over. And that's in a last article I wrote. I touched the domestic abuse as well because I have a lot of that. So it kind of, then I sat down to write, it kind of touched that too. I'm like, wait a minute, I can help these people too, the girls who are struggling with the abuse. But I was terrified. I was like, there's no way. But then at the same time, I was this year I'm getting over not all my fears, but one by one. My biggest one was public speaking. I just could not even, if you asked me last year, I wouldn't be able to do this. Now I got over myself, right? And I'm like, and at that point, somebody said, you have to think about people you have to help. You know, you could help by being on a stage. So then I'm like, wait a minute, it's the same with my book. Now I'm going to let my fear stop me from helping people who I know how they feel, right? Because I've been there. I know how they feel. I want to get them out in the light so they can actually enjoy life because they don't know they can. Because so I had to put that aside and say, no, I'm going to do it for others because it's not about me anymore.
Yeah, you're called to serve. I love that so much. And it's funny you say that about public speaking because I will tell you a little secret. I have my first public speaking event at the end of this month, and I am scared to death. It is, yes, it has been my biggest fear too. And it's funny because, just a quick side note, I come from a performance background. So I'm used to being on stage, but not talking as myself. So
Mm-hmm.
nice for you that you were able to conquer that fear. I'll let you know how I do.
I'm still working on it. I'm still working on it. The ones that the interviews like this, I'm like, okay, I'm not even nervous anymore, which I love. Before,
Yeah.
I would not even turn my camera on. I would not say anything. I would just be behind the scenes. But now I'm reading at church again. You know, when you go in front of a church and read. So
Yeah.
the first time I almost backed up. I told my friend, I'm like, I cannot do it. Please go read. She said no. So I had to go. Second time I did it, so this is the third time. I still go through feelings, but now I'm trying to trick my mind because I've realized like the first time, the whole 3 months I was preparing for it, I kept telling everybody and myself how scared I am. And I'm like, how I am expecting not to be scared if I keep telling myself and everybody, you tell yourself. So now I say, no, I'm not. Every time I have that thought, I'm like, I'm absolutely not. And actually,
Yeah.
somebody told me this 2 days ago, and I'm like, I'm totally going to use it. And I just loved it. And, you know, different things work for different people. And this guy said, every time I go to speak on stage, I imagine that all these people are little rabbits sitting there. And I'm like, that's such a cute thing. Like, if you imagine all of just little rabbits and you just talk to them, it's just funny and kind of, I'm like, I'm gonna try it this Sunday because I have to go read again. And I'm like, I'm telling myself it's the third time. You got this, you're gonna be fine.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. I love that too.
Yeah, I loved it. And I'm like, it's always like all these people that come up and they give you all these ideas like at the right time.
Yeah.
You know, and my son too, he's only 9 years old, but he's like, Mom, you can also imagine that these are all the little kids that don't care. Like they're just
Yeah.
sitting there. And honestly, when you go on stage, the lights, you can't see
You
anybody.
can't see. Right. Yeah.
And I loved it. And also then I speak in a microphone, it feels like it's somebody else's voice. So then you're like, okay, it's somebody else. Like your mind doesn't, and it's once I go there, it's just for me to get on that stage.
Yeah.
Once I go there, I'm fine, you
Yeah.
know, because the first time I thought, I'm like, oh my God, I can't do it. But I did it.
But you
And
did
I'm like,
it.
so
Yeah.
you'll
And
do
it's,
great too.
thanks. It's funny that you say that. It's, what we think is, the phrase, um, focus or energy goes where focus flows. Have you heard that
Yes.
phrase before? And it's so true. And I want to just quick tie it back to drinking when you said it's a choice for me not to
Yeah.
have that first drink. It's my choice. Do you know who Annie Grace is?
You mean people who,
No,
what do you mean by it?
Annie Grace, the
Oh, no. Mm-mm.
you should look her up because she's in the same space as you. She's
Mm-hmm.
another
Oh,
person who she wrote a book called This Naked Mind,
mm-hmm.
and her focus is on almost the same thing that we were just talking about. It's like rewiring your brain, reprogramming your brain to say, you know what, this is my choice. I'm in control here.
Mm-hmm.
You're not in control, alcohol or whatever the addiction is. And so she has a really interesting approach on science and the neural pathways and rewiring and reprogramming, things like that. So it's kind of ties in. Definitely look her up because I think
I will. I will
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure. Yeah, thank you.
she's great. But anyway, I want to go back. I want to take you back. First
Mhm.
off, where are you from originally?
Lithuania.
Okay, and for people listening that might not be familiar, where is that?
It's Europe near Poland,
Poland.
Russia, I would say around Poland, Russia, Baltic Sea.
Okay.
Mhm.
And so you grew up there?
Germany. I'm from there. So I came here when I was like 20 years old, 21,
So and where are you now?
in Chicago.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So tell us about a little bit about I want to dive into sort of the topic of the show generally is about born or made entrepreneurs. Do we have, because a lot of people that we have think we're crazy, right? Our entrepreneurial minds, right? So I want to know, do you think that you were destined to be an entrepreneur and have your own business, or was this something that sort of came about after you made those big life changes for you?
So now that I look back, I think I was born to do it. I just had no idea about it until
Or yeah, or
about
how? Yeah.
about 2 years ago. Honestly, everybody around me were like, "Oh, I want to do business and this," and I actually went to college for business, and I never wanted to do anything with it. And I
No.
think it just made me, the life made me, all the events. And then I realized that I went through what I went through to be able to do what I do right now, to be able to help people, because without it, I wouldn't have, a chance to even like, you can't go to school, learn to, I feel it's different when you go to school and learn how to help people with alcohol, but you've never done it.
Oh,
That's why I
yeah.
always, that I always say that family members, they will never understand. Because unless you're in it, you will never understand, because all the things I've done, I'm like, how could I do that? Right. So guilt is another big thing that you have to work on, because that eats you alive. Right. And a lot of people let that guilt sit there. And then before you know it, we get back into drinking again. So you got to fix that, because you can't change anything in the past. So I definitely think I came here to do that. It's just I did not know that until a couple of years ago. I had no idea.
Yeah. So what was your business education when you went to school for business?
It
Why
was
did you?
business law, but I never did
Oh,
anything. So I
okay.
was always in dental office, medical office. I was management until a couple years ago. I said, I just want to leave. And I actually had no idea what I'm going to do.
So
No idea.
let's talk about that transition, what that must have been like for you to take that leap and leave your comfy, cozy job
Yes.
and start really serving others like you're doing now. What was that transition like, and how, I guess the question I'm asking is how quickly did you realize, okay, I made the right decision here?
I feel like I'm the person who I don't regret things. So if I made a choice, I'm just gonna go in, and I always, every situation I walk into, you just see positives. So obviously
Yeah.
this is not, I created the whole another business with dental billing, but this is what I do as a passion, as to help people. And I feel God puts me in the places. So I don't see this as business. For me, I just feel money comes once you do right things. So my other thing is business, right? This is what I do from my heart, and actually, help people. So money is not a priority for me, but I also don't say no, for people who want to give me money. But I think every time I go somewhere, I sit somewhere, even in the middle of a beach, I meet someone and they start talking, and these are people who needed my help. So kind of God puts you in places where you belong. So I don't see it as a business. I just let it go. These are the tools, and I just sit here and think what else I can do, right? I do articles, I do anything really. I just sit here and think, okay, what else I can do to help people with the addictions, and any other tools I can create, because everybody's different. For somebody's going to be AA, what's going to help? Somebody's going to do it on their own. Somebody needs a book, somebody needs a course. Everybody's different. So I'm just trying to put all these tools out there for people. And I think once you're doing the right things, the money just come from
Yeah.
different sources, or this source or here. I just don't focus on money, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does make sense because, and I think that's so important too, because when you're just in a genuine place of wanting to help or serve people, that's when your clients will find you and build that relationship with you and want to give you money
Yeah.
rather than somebody just trying to sell and make money. It totally makes sense. So you mentioned a couple times you have all of the tools to help people. So let's just revisit what you do. So you help people. You have a course,
Mhm.
yes?
Yeah, so I
And
do one-on-one coaching, then my book right here.
oh,
It's
it's
called
blurry. It's
it's Circle of Wine
okay.
on Amazon. It's
Circle
called
of
Circle
wine.
of Wine, and it's Greta K. So it says the only way to beat your alcohol addiction. Then I did the audiobook as well. I have an article in Wow Warriors magazine, and
Oh, I think that's how I found you.
I think so.
Actually,
That might
yeah,
be.
that is how I found you because I interviewed Sherry Leopold
Yes,
on here
I
a
love
couple.
her.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
so
love her so much.
that's how I found you, was in that magazine. I just remembered that.
hmm Yeah, absolutely. So then I'm creating the online course so people just can log in and do and it's all based on that five-step program.
Okay. And you
hmm
said you do have
Yeah,
one-on-one coaching.
absolutely. Yeah,
Do
it's
you have
again whichever works for people. So when they reach out to me, I'm like, okay, let's do a consultation, see where you at, what you want to do, and then how do you learn best? What do you feel is the best for you? And then I kind of just, adjust to
is
what they.
everything virtual or do you do anything in person where you're at?
If it's right here, yeah, I could do in person. And again, life brings you people. So I'm not looking for people, they find me. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
amazing. I love that you I love that you're just offering so many different
Yeah.
options for people depending on what works best, like you said. Do you have any, or have you ever thought about doing any group coaching?
See, that's why probably I'm talking to you. I know, not yet. But that's a
Yeah,
great
it
idea.
is a
Yeah.
great idea.
That's a
Yeah,
great
we
idea.
could definitely, I could toss around some ideas for you, but I think that would be a great idea. What's on the horizon for you? Anything new coming up? Any new releases? Are you working on another book?
So you know what? I'm open to, I have those things that, it's all, you are just a tool, right? So it's not you creating all these things. It's all
Yeah.
comes from somebody
Yes.
higher than us. So I don't force it. I just let it be and they just come naturally to me. Sometimes I just sit in the middle of a day and I'm like, oh my God, I could do this, right? And then I do it. So I'm waiting for those kind of like just talking to you. Now I'm sure that idea is gonna sit in my mind. I'm gonna do I'm gonna do the group.
Yeah.
But again, I let it come naturally. I don't like I've learned to I used to be in control all the time. Everything had to be how I wanted, and now, right? Now I'm learning and I learned that that's not the way to go. So I just let it all come naturally at the time that it's supposed to be. I just believe in that.
Now, were you always spiritual? You've mentioned God. I totally believe in God and Jesus Christ and all of that. So, if you don't mind, I want to ask you: have you always been spiritual, or was this sort of part of your awakening and I want to call it like your rebirth almost? But it,
Yeah, I feel like God was always so. I grew up, my grandma used to, take me to church. And I honestly, then even drinking, even before passing out, right? I would always pray because I was hoping for that light. And I always say there's a light at the tunnel, right? It's
mm,
just your choice if you want to grab onto it and go there or keep playing with evil stuff, right? So it's as I say, like some people are like, oh, it's a lot about God. And I'm like, it doesn't have to be God. It's good or bad, like whatever you believe in. But I feel I wouldn't be alive if my angels and God wasn't with me at a lot of times that I was in the
yeah,
dark. And I know the difference when you turn to God. And I did so work on spiritual on my, finding my purpose, finding who I am and what I want really a couple of years ago. I started going to found the church that I want. And I'm very active at my church right now because I feel it changes your life. It just totally changes your life. And then you kind of believe in something bigger and then all these rewards come automatically. So I see the difference that I was and was not, you know. So obviously
mhm,
I'm way more involved right now in
that's awesome.
all.
And
Yeah.
something I want to touch on that you mentioned earlier, about how people in your life change after such a big I guess, change in you. Have you talk about that a little bit? How have you experienced that? Because you said that now people that are around you support you and it's different. Can you talk about that a little bit?
These people, like, it's just, I feel people who used to want to drink with you and weren't really there for you, and they still have a problem that they don't want to fix. They don't like being around you anymore. And
Mm,
they just slowly fall, away, and
yeah,
you stop talking to them. A lot of people I don't want to be around anymore. So some of them I tell, some of them I have no idea why I don't talk to them anymore. But you just feel like you don't have the same interest anymore.
yeah,
Right. So like I created now in my church, we are just so close, right? I'm in a choir, like I do all these things, and all these people are of the same interests as me. We love positivity, we love this. Nobody likes drinks or anything like that, or I don't know. At least they probably don't have a problem, right? And these
yeah.
people who still have a problem, they don't like to see you succeed because
Oh, yeah.
they usually can't get out of it. So they don't like seeing you succeed. That's why a lot of times if you quit smoking, you start again, they're like, oh my God, have a cigarette, have a drink, because that's going to make them feel better because they can't get out of it. So when
Right.
they see you succeed, and a lot of times I see people from my past, it's either the way they look right now, and I'm like, oh my God, I would probably be the same, right? Or people who thought I was probably dead like 10 years ago, they see you change, and that just confirmation in their eyes, you can see you doing really well, but people, it's kind of, again, everything starts happening different. Like you find new people that are different, that the same interests. And people who I say, usually people who drink, they just need to stay together,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
otherwise, like, I would not consider somebody who's drinking or smoking as my partner, right?
yeah.
It's just not an option for me right now.
So you said your partner, are you married?
I'm divorced right now. Yeah, I did. I was not happy, I guess. So I just,
Okay, so that
yeah,
had nothing to do with your giving up alcohol, or did it?
no.
Okay, so
Mm-mm.
that was I'm
No, that's
wondering about
complete.
like really personal relationships, say with a partner or husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, how that might maybe you could speak to that on some people that you work with. Say if one person decides not to drink anymore, but the other person still drinks socially, has there ever been a situation of the relationship ending because of that?
I don't think our relationship ended because of that, but I obviously didn't like him drinking, right? Because he
Yeah.
did still like drink, but he didn't drink the way I did, right?
Hmm.
But I didn't like, I don't mind when people drink. I feel it's their choice. I just don't like when they get in my face when they're drunk.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't,
Yeah.
I don't like the
Totally.
smell. I don't like the
Yeah.
talk. I'm like, just let's talk tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
I just, I just don't like it because a lot
Yeah.
of as I say, when you drink, it's not you. It's not you. You always say things you would never say. You do things you would never do, right? So
Yes.
that's why I say it's evil using you to do all these harm, because all these
I love,
money
yeah.
loss, all the fights, everything happens where it's alcohol,
I
right?
love that analogy of good and evil.
It
Like,
is, and it is. And like once you're drunk, you usually attack people that are there, the people who are trying to help you, because you attack the people that are closest to you.
mhm,
And that's how I realize is literally you get that, and it writes in my book. It's like a little, and I call them little devils, and they still sit on my shoulder, right? It's just the more there's a gap of you not drinking, you become stronger. So anytime, sometimes it still comes up, like my dad died last year, right? They're like, I had this urge to smoke, and I'm like, I got so mad. Like, I can barely breathe. And now you're trying to get me to smoke again at the moment like this. So as I say, they probably got scared because I was so mad. I'm like, so I've never heard them, but sometimes it's like, oh, you should have a drink. They're always there. They're always gonna try to get you back,
yeah.
but you're just strong. And now, like, for me, it's funny. I'm like, it's funny. But in the beginning, it's hard. You have to understand you're never cured. And that's why I say the only way to beat the addiction, not cure it, because you can't cure it. It's always going to be there. That's why people who don't drink for 20 years, they think they're cured, but they're not. You have to always know one drink, you go from good to evil, and then it's just the same and usually just worse.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome stuff. Now, if somebody would like to buy your book, they can do it on Amazon, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
It's
And it's
called
called
Circle of
Circle of
Wine.
Wine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And there's also an audio version.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Is the audio version on Audible?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
And if somebody is interested in working with you or finding you, how would they do that?
It's GretaKBooks@gmail.com. You
Okay.
can find me there. There's Circle of Wine on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. So pretty much if you do Circle of Wine, you're gonna find it. Besides all the things about wine, there's gonna be a book, because then in the beginning, and that name too, it came up to me. Then I wrote that first article. It just came to me, Circle of Wine, and I'm like, I don't understand. Like it kind of doesn't make sense. So then I wanted to publish the book. Somebody told me, they're like, you shouldn't use the name of a drink on your book. And so I started thinking about it. So I almost wanted to change it. So I kept thinking about all these names. And I'm like, wait a minute. No, that name was with me since day one.
Yeah.
And wine was my favorite drink. And the circle is because it's all the circle. If you get in it, you're not gonna get out.
Yeah, that's
So
immediately what I thought of. I think it totally makes sense. That's the first
yeah.
thing I
So
thought. It's
somebody
like,
told me, and I'm like, no, I'm just gonna stick to what I felt because I could not come up with another name. And I wrote it in my language too, the Lithuanian language as well. So I translated it. So I'm just doing one thing at the time, whichever comes
yeah.
to my
Well,
mind.
I have a feeling that you are going to be very successful because just talking to you, I can tell you do so good for people. And I just think it's awesome. I think it's
Oh,
awesome what
thank
you're
you so
doing.
much.
Yeah.
I love
So
doing it, and it comes from my heart. So
I can
that's
tell, I can see it in your face. I love that. So at the end of every interview,
Mhm.
I always ask just a few random questions just to
Sure.
kind of get to know you a little bit better. Okay. So the first one I'm going to ask you is if you had the opportunity to go to space and walk on the moon, would you do it?
No.
Yeah, no, me either. I agree. I'll stay right here on.
Unless I'm working on my fear of heights. Okay. Once
Well,
I get to that point, if you ask me next year, I might.
that's quite a height. Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's
That
funny.
will help me for sure.
We have the same fears. I have a fear of heights too. That's
Yeah.
funny. Okay. If you had the opportunity to have dinner with anyone, alive or
Mhm.
dead, who would it be?
My dad.
Oh, I love that so much.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay. And then lastly, what book has most inspired you in your life, whether it be fiction or business?
I would say The Power of Now
Oh
was important
yeah,
to me.
I've heard
Because
that.
it helped me quiet my inner voice that was always with me, always working. And that's why then I go on on stage now. I'm able to talk to my inner voice and say, okay, right now I'm gonna go do it. I understand you're afraid, and just understanding that you're in charge. Again, like with the addiction, you're in charge. You just let it go too much, where it
Yeah,
takes over. So now I can actually go to sleep at night, and I don't have all these things going, because my mind would always race. I would always think about a million things I can do at work for kids and everything. And now I can say, no, we're going to sleep now. We're just gonna
that's
finish what's
awesome.
up.
It's
I
called
think
The
that's
Power
me.
of Now.
Yes.
Okay.
hmm
Yeah, that's great. Do you know who wrote it or
If I go, I'm so bad with names.
no, that's okay. I'll look it up and
You'll
I'll
find it.
yeah,
It starts with a E. The last name, it starts with a E.
I'll
I
find it
know.
and I'll put it in the show
hmm
notes in case
hmm
anybody wants to read it.
Yeah, absolutely. I can probably email it to you.
Okay. All
Yeah, but
right.
it's an amazing book. I think everybody should, because you should read it. It's kind of like, I think the first 1/3 of a book explains it, but I'm very straight to a point. Like the other part was kind of confusing I mean, but the first thing where it says, you just tell yourself, say, okay, your inner voice, you say, tell me now, I'm listening, and then it just shuts off. And I'm like, I have never felt so quiet. I
That's
always had that inner voice, all my guilt and all the things is always talking to me, and it
yeah.
was quiet, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, "I don't know, it could be that quiet," and it was just amazing moment
That's
for me.
that's awesome. Would you say that that's talking to your inner voice like that? Would you say that that's a kind of a form of meditation, or is that, have you ever meditated?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I do every day, but in meditation, I think you still need to quiet that voice and say, "Hey,
Yeah.
we're meditating." So some people then once you start getting into something, you see all these other things. And so then some people have names, right? So you just call it like Susan or something and be like, "Susan, calm down for now. Now I'm
Yeah.
gonna go do this." So I understand you're scared because that little person in you, they're just trying to protect you, right? So they're doing their job. But if you
Yeah.
let them, they're gonna take over and say, no, we're not doing this, we're not going there because we're scared, shy, all that stuff. So you gotta make it okay. I appreciate you, but right now we're still gonna go do it.
Yeah. Oh, that is such great advice. For
Yeah,
anyone that's listening, try that, because I don't care who you are, whether or not you're struggling with addiction or not,
yeah,
our inner voice can be pretty
addictive.
harmful at times and scary and just loud and annoying. So definitely, I will take that advice.
Absolutely. And then I tried the same night. I kept having those thoughts and I'm like, okay, no, I'm gonna go to sleep now. And it shut off. And I'm like, okay.
Like shutting off
But
the light.
it shuts off it's
Yeah.
quiet. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, so it actually listens to you because you are in control, but you let it be in control until you know.
That's awesome. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Greta, this has been so fun
No,
talking
it
to you.
was pleasure too.
I've
It's
had a great
amazing.
time.
Oh,
So
thank you.
thank you everybody for listening to another episode of the Born or Made podcast, and I will see you next time.